Good evening. Thank you for participating in our remote regular monthly meeting of the Parks Advisory Board. We will do our best to facilitate a smooth meeting with public participation and ask that everyone be patient as we navigate this electronic platform. We have two formats for participation, the Zoom web application as well as teleconference. Before we begin, I want to review some guidelines and general instructions for the meeting. Please silence your other communication devices such as your cell or desk phone. This will ensure that we are not hearing any feedback or causing interruptions during the meeting. During the meetings, all participants on Zoom, except for board members and county staff, will be placed on mute by the host. That means you will not be able to mute or unmute your lines manually. The chair will announce opportunities for public comment, which are included in the meeting agenda. For those on Zoom, if you would like to make public comment, please click the raise hand feature to signal that you would like to comment. The sound will be unmuted. The internet participant should announce their first and last name before speaking. Participant will be called upon to speak at the appropriate time. For those calling in using the phone line only, if you'd like to make public comment, please dial *9 on your keypad to signal that you would like to comment. The last 4 digits of the call-in number will be announced, and call-in participants should announce their first and last name before speaking. The participant will be called upon to speak at the appropriate time. Please note, you can hang up or leave the Zoom meeting at any time. So with that being said, bifocals outwitting computer? Yes. Welcome, and we'll have introductions first off.
Lisa Hurt, North Kitsap.
Linda Berry Maury, North Kitsap.
John Pearson, Central Kitsap.
Dawn Doctor, South Kitsap, District 2.
Jen Skalbeck, North Kitsap. Jessica Rice, South Kitsap, District 2.
And I'm Larry Walker, soon to be former chair of the advisory board, South Kitsap. And Alex, would your staff like to introduce?
Certainly. My name is Alex Wisniewski. I'm the Parks Director for Kitsap County. And I would like to recognize in my 5 years, this is the first time where the entire board has been all in the room together. There isn't a single soul online, and that's pretty fantastic. Though I do appreciate the hybrid opportunity and option for folks when they can't make it because the county is big. Thanks.
Irene Weber, Natural Resource Program Supervisor.
And Alex Hardy, Admin and Event Supervisor.
And you're not here?
I'm not there. I'm there in spirit, though.
And we feel it.
Excellent.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, has everybody had a chance to review the minutes from our last meeting? Any corrections, additions, subtractions? Yes, Dawn.
I'm going to make a comment. And again, this is my personal opinion. And I know it can vary, but we have recently added the comments from our public comment period into the minutes. I think it's interesting to be there, but as a Robert's Rules of Order kind of person, I don't think it belongs in our minutes, but I do appreciate the need as a public body to include them because I think it does help our community understand that we do take their comments and concerns seriously. So I'm on the fence on it, and I didn't know how other board members feel about leaving public comments in the minutes.
Anybody want to respond? Linda.
Personally, I think it's a good thing. People know that they've been heard.
I agree with Linda. I think it's a good thing because otherwise their voice is gone in the wind because my proposal I put out several months ago hasn't happened. So.
Yes.
I hear what you're saying and I agree. But I also think that it needs to go somewhere. And I think that, yeah, to be able to have that documented well, I think the minutes is probably the best option we have.
Our meetings are now recorded and the recordings are available online. Does that affect anybody's opinion?
Well, I'm going to weigh in here and everything. And I actually kind of like the encapsulation of that there because yes, it does. When somebody comes and speaks to us and speaks to the Parks Department, there's a record of, not the exact verbatim transcription of, but there's the spirit of what they have said, what their comments are. And if we wanted to require the public to have to dig in and request copy of the audio transcript to locate what they had said, I think that's an onerous burden to put on the public. And this validates them. It's fairly low key and everything. I know we'll probably argue about this until we're done, but that's my opinion.
I agree, Larry. And I also think it helps jog the memory of the subcommittee to, oh yeah, that's right. They did say that. So it's win-win, I think.
Let it be entered into the notes that she and I agreed for once. Alex, you've been waving your hand there. Did you?
Just one item for clarification. We have not posted Zoom recordings yet of the meetings, but we do intend to. It was something that we talked about after the last meeting. We have the ability to do it, so we're working on it, but we are going to get the structure in place so we can post them so that there isn't any need for interpretation in the minutes for comments that are stated, that the video is there, people can view it unfiltered.
One more time, Dawn.
Thank you for letting me voice my concern. And I have no other comments regarding the minutes then.
Well, thank you, Dawn. Does anybody else have any? Hearing no comments, I would entertain a motion to adopt our minutes.
So moved.
Moved by John.
Second.
John seconds. All in favor, please. We can actually raise our hands. Opposed? Motion carries. We have minutes. Public comment, 3 minutes per person.
My name is Casey Pat. I'm with the Control Society. And
Hang on, Casey. Our technical expert is coming.
Okay. Silly phone. Okay, my name's Casey Pat and I'm with the Kitsap Aircraft Radio Control Society, and we operate our little field over there in South Coulter Creek Heritage Park. On the 20th and the 24th of October, we had 2 issues of vandalism where an individual, and the only thing we can think of is that it was a stolen vehicles because they drove through the Bonneville Power Access Road through the forest onto our area, and they spun donuts in our runway. They ripped it up, and then the wind basically turned it into a sail. And then they went ahead and proceeded to drive out the park access gate, and they jammed it towards Sunny Slope Road, and been up the gate pretty well and everything else. I reported it to Alex and also Bree, and we filed the necessary police reports. The following Monday after it happened, we had a 20-person working party, and we were able to go ahead and put all the torn edges back together, staple it and nail it down and then patch it up. Thank goodness we had good weather. And secondly, through the 31st of October, I'd like to go ahead and report that through our field use hours, we've actually had 6,325 hours at the field this year, with 2 months remaining, and which is the highest we've ever had. And our field maintenance was 918 hours, and the club spent over $1,000 as far as doing necessary maintenance around the field. And then lastly, we have now entered our 3rd year of Young Eagle Build in partnership with the Experimental Aircraft Association. We have 8 kids between 10 and 13 They're actually building the airplane. We're 90% complete with the actual build. Now they're going to go ahead and start doing the covering. And they are expecting to go ahead and actually do the maiden on the airplane approximately the March timeframe. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Sorry to hear about what happened to you.
Hi, my name's Catherine Ander. I live in Port Orchard. I moved to Port Orchard last year in 2024 and started volunteering with parks. I wanted to talk to you today about the Coulter Creek Heritage Park. Since becoming a steward there, I took over for Dawn when she was a steward, and we happened to have good timing to have her pass it off to me. What I wanted to talk about is that just to let you know that Coulter Creek Heritage Park went through restoration thinning from 2017 to 2022, various parts in the park. And I'm new to park work. I'm new to forest and forest stewardship. But what I see when I am in that park is I see regeneration of undergrowth. I see canopy becoming more robust. I see native plants returning. And that this is something that has been voiced as a concern when we attended other meetings, especially with Banner Forest. And I just wanted to put it on record that a thin forest is a healthy forest. And I want to welcome anybody who wants to come walk through there with me and see regeneration at different stages, because there was this time frame through the thinning. I want to also address the concern that folks have about Scotch broom. Yes. So there are other invasive species as well. But what we do, and again, I took over for Dawn with her great example, and we had lead work parties in the park. We do this twice a month on a regular basis. And we built a community of volunteers that come and look forward to coming. We work together 2 hours. We get a tremendous amount done, and we're able to mitigate what's there with the Scotch broom. We're making great progress, and we join also with parks with some of the opportunities they have with mowing, et cetera, to make sure that we don't have a forest that's overcome. So that was basically it. It's an open invitation, and that's all. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Any more public comment?
We do have online comments, and I'll start with Beverly Parsons. I'm allowing you to talk. There you go. Go ahead.
Okay, thanks. I'm Beverly Parsons from Hansville, and I was able to join your online your presentation to the Board of County Commissioners on Monday afternoon. I was very pleased to learn about the changes that are in the works so that some park staff, I think they were talking about Irene and Kevin, are proposed to be funded through general funds rather than being dependent on funds generated through activities like sale of timber that comes from thinning. So this seems to open up possibilities for the timing of the thinning and when it's done, and ensuring that the environmental health for the forest is a high priority. So I just wanted to compliment you on having worked that out. I think that's great. I did have a question about the documents about the forest stewardship and restoration policy and strategic plan that are in the packet for tonight. I didn't have time to look at all of those documents, so the answer to my question may be in there. But I was hoping that tonight, when you discuss those documents, you could explain a little bit more about the specific methods of thinning. I really understand the importance of that and appreciate that. I simply had a question about the type of equipment that you'll be using. For example, I was very curious about whether any of the thinning is going to be done by chainsaws and something other than the big equipment. And then I was interested in the the range of types of big equipment that you'll be using. And I was also curious about whether the community is actually involved in decisions at this level of detail. I've heard from some people that an important issue for them as to the type of equipment that's being used and how the thinning is being done. So I was just hoping you could provide a few answers to those questions so I'd be better informed about that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Beverly. Yes, I think they did a really wonderful job of briefing the county commissioners. I'm sure Irene will be able to answer your questions here in about 15 minutes.
Thanks.
And we have another public comment online, and Joe Lubisher, I'm allowing you to talk.
Good evening. My name is Joe Lubisher from Indianola. I hope everybody's well. So I've got a number of comments here on the forestry plan. First, I'd like the record to show there's been no opportunity for public review or input. There should have been. Secondly, I was looking forward to reading this, especially to see what the specifics were. And I find that the document is primarily aspirational. And so it doesn't seem particularly useful. My point number 3 is an example that the repeated phrase, use best available data. What in the world does that mean? We've been waiting for years for parks to add existing wetland data to the Port Gamble mapping. Still hasn't happened. Ditto for the North Kitsap wetlands is not in the count as mapping. Another example, my point 4, I didn't, maybe it's there, but I didn't see anything about addressing adverse impacts from the logging equipment, particularly the creation of roads and destruction of trails. I didn't see anything about how to minimize that and how to restore that. I think the people from Banner Park have made it clear that those adverse impacts do exist. And lastly on that, I read the brief description of North Kitsap Heritage Park. It was a little disappointing. You'd think that North Kitsap Park is entirely a Douglas fir plantation ready to be thinned. There is nothing about the wide variety in the park. It's streams, it's wetlands, it's unique ecological areas, the wildlife corridors. So it seems like what is actually going to happen is still waving in the air, that we don't really know. Lastly, in regard to a comment I made last week on the fee schedule, I exchanged emails with Alex Hardy and basically confirmed that there's no real criteria or definition for when a group needs to get some kind of permit or permission. Is it okay to bring, for a mountain bike group, to bring 50 bikers in to ride through Banner Park? The public doesn't have a clue, and that I think that should be corrected. And thank you for retaining the public comments. And that's all.
Thank you, Joe. Always a pleasure to hear from you. All right, we will move on to our next item of agenda, special presentations and reports. Board positions elections, that's for the chair and the vice chair. So I will turn this over to the head of the nominating committee.
Thank you, Larry. I do have a report. Dear Chairman, Chairperson, the nominating committee submits the following nominations: for chairperson, Dawn Doctor; for vice chairperson, Jessica Rice. Well, no, I still have. Yeah. Thank you.
Oh, okay. So at this point, with nominations are open, that's a report of the committee. Does anybody want to self-nominate? You can't non-vol. You already got read into the registers. Well, hearing none, do we wish to bind this over and have the election in January? Or I would entertain a motion to and elect by acclamation and everything. And then Dawn, you can decide when you want to be seated, whether you want to seat at the end of the meeting or at the end of the election.
I thought it started in January.
Okay, that was very, very specific. So I would entertain a motion to elect by acclamation of our two candidates.
I'll make a motion that we elect Dawn Doctor and Jessica Rice as president and vice president effective January 2026.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Well, hearing none. Then we will all in favor of electing Dawn and Jessica as chair and vice chair effective January 2026. Please raise your hand. Any opposed? Congratulations. We will have a change of command ceremony in January. Damn. Okay. Forest restoration and stewardship policy and strategic plan. That would be you, Irene.
All right, let me just share my screen. It's all set up. All right. So yeah, we are going to talk once again about the forest stewardship and restoration updates that we've been discussing over the past year. So this is an update to those plans based on feedback that we've received from the Board of County Commissioners, the Parks Advisory Board, as well as members of the public. So just as a refresher, forests in Kitsap County parks are largely acquired from state and private ownership. Much of our forested acreage was former production tree farms that have been logged at least once, that have been densely replanted with the intent to cut again. Many also have legacy road systems from this former industrial use. Many of these forests are departed from historic or desirable conditions. Forest health and habitat quality has declined in these areas. Our long-term goal is to improve forest health, resilience, and habitat quality. The keys are sticky today. Here we go. Program purpose, to create forests in Kitsap County parks that have compositions and structures to facilitate the growth of large vigorous trees that are resilient to stressors. We want these forests to provide high quality habitats that have high ecological function. We want to maintain and enhance soil conditions within the parks and allow opportunities for the public and cultural foraging and gathering to occur, and a refugia for wildlife and humans in an increasingly developing and urbanizing environment. So the two documents that we've been discussing are the Forest Stewardship Restoration Policy and the Forest Stewardship and Restoration Strategic Plan. The policy document describes why stewardship and restoration activities are needed in Kitsap County parks and at a very high level, how they would like to be accomplished. It outlines the purpose and need, the goals and objectives, and high-level guidance for the program based on scientific literature and accepted best practices. The Forest Stewardship and Restoration Strategic Plan, which I'll get into that name change in a second, is a technical document that provides a high-level system-wide plan to implement the updated policy for the next 10 years. Stewardship and restoration activities needed in the focus parks, including assessment, monitoring, planning, permitting, implementation, and management, are discussed. We sent our policy document out for external review by local and regional forest restoration experts, including members of Nature Conservancy, land trusts, tribal representatives, and other counties who do similar work. The timeline for these documents includes bringing them to you all in front of the Parks Advisory Board. I know we have some new members, so you won't have seen all of these presentations. But the policy was first reviewed this time last year by our sub-PAB committee members and presented to the board at the November meeting. The plan was reviewed in June of this year by our sub-PAB committee members and presented to the Parks Advisory Board in the July meeting. We also presented in July, we had a public outreach and engagement series of meetings, and the review of that engagement period was presented to the Parks Advisory Board in August of this year. Feedback and concerns from the Parks Advisory Board members were incorporated into these documents, and we want to highlight that the Parks Advisory Board expressed concern about the funding structure. Progress and updates have been provided to the Board of County Commissioners throughout this process. Updates on the document progress have been regularly provided to the board in our parks updates since 2024. The commissioners were individually briefed on both of these documents in April of 2025, and a public engagement plan was provided to the board in May of 2025. Our commissioners were also involved in our public meetings and site visits in July, and the commissioners also received the presentation and the analysis of the public feedback in August of 2025. Our public engagement timeline in July, park staff hosted 6 public meetings to provide information about the update to the policy and plan. We also advertised and hosted a feedback form online to solicit input from the community regarding these documents and their programs. Staff had responded to many emails from concerned community members and have met in person with several. An analysis of all this feedback was presented to the Board of County Commissioners and the Parks Advisory Board in August and is available on the Parks webpage. The Board of County Commissioners requested several changes to these documents in July and August of last year. Board of County Commissioners, DAS, and Parks are changing the funding structure of the Natural Resource Program per Parks Advisory Board and community feedback. Approval of these documents has been delayed until that issue was resolved. The board requested that a more detailed explanation for future planning processes, park plans, and project plans be included within the strategic plan. And the board also requested that estimated project implementation dates be removed from the plan. So I'm going to go into a summary of the updates that happened to these documents. These changes were made based on board requests, Park Advisory Board feedback, and by concerns raised by community members. So the big thing is the financial model change. As we highlighted in the original document, there are challenges to maintaining financial self-sustainability of the program, which was the original model in which this program was developed. The Parks Advisory Board and community feedback have called for a change to the funding structure to disconnect staff salaries from the timber fund. For these reasons, the following changes are being made. We're dissolving the special fund into the general fund. Moving program expenses and staff salaries into the general fund will result in long-term sustainable program cost structure. Any cost recovery generated from the sale of timber product removed for ecological or restoration objectives will return to the general fund. We will utilize other revenue sources to cover program costs, including REIT 2, park impact fees, as well as pursuing grants in order to cover costs of the restoration program. Updates that have been made to the policy. We changed the language to reflect the change in the funding structure. We heard a lot of concerns about invasive species and monitoring needs, so we added language to reflect our intent to perform those activities. We added more information to clearly explain the planning process. And in the section describing activity types, additional information and references were added to explain treatment types, as well as a section clarifying the policy to retain legacy trees. Within the plan, we changed the name from implementation plan to strategic plan. This was partially because the title of the plan was being interpreted as implementation of projects rather than the implementation of the policy. So by changing it to strategic plan, we're hoping that is more clear or at least more easily differentiated. We also changed the language within the plan regarding the new funding structure. The extensive financial analysis was moved to an appendix because we have a different financial structure now. Language and figure regarding planning structure and process was added for clarity. We also added additional references to best management practices and peer-reviewed studies. Additional language regarding the monitoring and adaptive management schedule was also added, as well as a comprehensive schedule of planning processes for the next 10 years. So this is the figure that was added to better explain the planning process. So these two blue squares, the policy and the 10-year strategic plan, these are the two documents that we're talking about. These are high-level documents that look at the entire county using kind of broad and high-level data. So if you're thinking about, this in terms of a focus of an image, this is very pixelated. But it helps us understand where across the county restoration needs are and helps us plan out where we need to do additional work in order to figure out at a more detailed level what those restoration needs are. The next step after this would be to create park plans for all of the parks that need restoration action. These are tailored to forest conditions within each park. They're a much more detailed assessment of restoration needs, as well as sensitive areas. They will also go into more detail about specific techniques that are being used. And there is a outreach to community members and stakeholders will be a part of this park planning process. After the park plan is developed, it will go to the Board of County Commissioners for approval. Only after we have a park plan for the specific park will there be any movement towards project implementation. So just to talk about park planning a little bit more, park planning starts with a park assessment, which includes forest inventory, identification of sensitive areas, and other data collection efforts depending on park conditions and specific park needs. We'll synthesize the above assessments into a data-driven justification for stewardship and restoration treatments in the park that supports the goals and objectives outlined in the Forest Stewardship and Restoration Policy. For each treatment area identified in the park plan, we will identify expected short and long-term effects from the treatments, which may include impacts to recreational opportunities, changes in forest conditions, and how we expect the forest to move towards desired conditions based on the treatment. Then we will take this park assessment and bring it to the community. We'll do extensive outreach and collaboration with the public and stakeholders, communicate assessment findings, stewardship and restoration needs, and proposed projects. So it'll be an opportunity to solicit comments and feedbacks about the park stewardship and restoration plan, which will then be used to help refine the plan. So to address Beverly and Joe's comments, this at this park plan level is where they will get that level of detail that is missing from these higher level plans. After we incorporate feedback from outreach, the Park Advisory Board, and the Board of County Commissioners, other stakeholders into the final plan, we will have within the plan a list of recommended projects with a schedule and analysis of impacts of action versus non-action. The park plan will then be brought to the Board of County Commissioners for final approval. Also included in this update is a Gantt chart or a timeline of these planning activities. So this shows what parks we're going to start with when it comes to park stewardship planning. And only after the plans are complete will we be able to predict when and be able to time out when we think there might be project implementation. So that's why you see a lot of timing of projects will be determined after park stewardship planning in this document. So as several people mentioned, we did present this to the Board of County Commissioners on Monday at our work study presentation. The board found that the changes that we have made to these documents were sufficient to meet their requests. And so we are bringing this to the Park Advisory Board to see if there are any questions or concerns from the PAB members.
Of course, I always have some questions. So, okay, I've been asking this question for a while and been unsure of the answer, but I think I got it now because the plan pretty much states this. It says, so I just want to clarify. So the term stewardship will now refer to the way the parks are stewarding the parks Parks will prescribe and specify stewardship and restoration actions along with appropriate timelines. So there will be no more stewards. So I'm wondering if the volunteer stewards or so they're just volunteers now. There's no more stewards. And do they have any say in the draft park forest stewardship and restoration plan anymore? Or is it a top-down document?
So the park stewards and the volunteer program is a totally separate thing. There is, that's going to be presented later on to talk about what the future of the park steward volunteer program is. This is totally separate from that. We will absolutely engage with our volunteers and park stewards during that park plan process. So they will be a part of that education and outreach part of that planning process.
Okay, so the way it's worded, it just talks about the stewardship of the parks in this plan. So I just wanted to
so
make that clear. Okay,
it's a separate thing.
Great. Okay, so do I get to ask anyone else have a question? Because
Just go for it. You got the floor.
well, okay. I want to say it's a great plan if the intent is followed through. There's that one part on page 3. It talks about the policy doesn't include the recreation trails or any other of the that type of infrastructure maintenance. So is the plan you're talking about says these areas will be addressed in topic specific policies. What policies are they? Is that like the park plan you're talking about, the specific like down lower level park plan?
So what we're referring to there is like in the park forest stewardship plan, we're not going to have things like we're building this trail here, we're moving this trail there. We will discuss things like impacts of restoration and treatments to recreation, but it won't address like the development of recreation.
So how will the two overlap then? Let's say you have something like North Kitsap Heritage Park and that beautiful ravine run that's like, structurally complex forest. And could a vocal minority, let's say, that want to like create a trail through there, be able to override the intent of this plan? Because the plan, like I said, is a great, you're into conservation and preserving. So I'm just curious if there's any way that can be overridden by people.
So where trails go and how they're built and that type of thing, like what is developed, that'll be part of a park master plan, which will be a separate document. The park forest stewardship plan, natural resource plans, environmental assessments will feed into the park master plan. But that's a little bit separate from this type of document. Does that make sense?
Yes. So, yeah. So, but I'm just wondering, could it override this document? Because I like this document. This is a great document. So
I don't think any sort of trail development request would override the need for restoration, forest restoration.
Maybe not the need for, but the continued preservation of that restoration. Or like you say, there's specific parks that don't require restoration and they're fine.
Yeah.
So would that like hold precedent? Would that be able to like be established as this is a structurally diverse forest and shouldn't be touched, shouldn't be destroyed?
So I think you're thinking about like what we've been talking about with like landscape use and landscape classifications, and that is going to be a part of it, the kind of the master planning process. So that it'll feed into that.
Okay. Okay. So it's still.
Well, it's just a separate process. Like the need for restoration, like is the need for forest restoration stands on its own, whether there's a trail there or not.
Right.
Whether a trail goes into a certain area of the park, that's a different type of planning process. That happens in master planning that also folds in additional environmental assessments beyond forest restoration and forest health. It'll include water analysis, wildlife analysis, and things like that. So there will be additional environmental assessments that go into something that would create a trail development in a park.
Excellent. That's a great answer. Thank you. And so one last thing. Sorry, the outreach and collaboration section, you talk about, asking public for their input, whatnot. Well, I've been getting a lot of feedback from the banner people and,
Sure.
basically they feel blown off or forgotten or ignored, whatever. So how does that fit into your outreach?
Yeah, so the best time for them to provide that feedback is during that park plan, because then we will be laser focused on that specific park. We'll have a lot more information about what the needs are at a much more specific level. We'll have more information about what, treatment needs are based on best management practices. So we'll have more information to share. And we'll be better set up to take their feedback and utilize it more effectively. At this high level, there really isn't a place to put that. So as we develop those plans, which, excuse me, is on the schedule for 26, 27, that is the best time for that community to reengage, and we will actively reengage with that community as well.
Excellent. So when they talk to me, I can just tell them that. So perfect. Thank you. That's great.
Just as a follow-on answer here. I talked to Commissioner Root on Monday, and Orrin Root, South Kitsap. Not rude. He was actually polite. But he indicated that he has every intention of doing routine outreach to the concerned people in South Kitsap about Banner. So he wants to continue a dialogue there. So if they reach out to you, you can let them know that their commissioner is wishing to engage with them.
I think they know that.
Also,
it's great to know that.
If you would, your mic, please.
It's also great to know what Irene just said about that will take place during the forest plan. So, okay. So, okay.
Yeah.
Good. Thank you. Clear now.
Oh, thank you very much. Anybody? Yes.
Okay, just a couple of things. I know that we've heard a lot of public comments on things. You had mentioned that there were the external reviewers. How is there any way that we can see kind of some of the feedback, or maybe you can explain some of the feedback that they had given you guys? Because I'm just interested in to hear kind of what some of that feedback was.
Yeah, it was over a year ago that we had to review it, so it's not fresh in my mind. But in general, we got some good feedback about environmental assessments, about adding in some specific references that we were able to incorporate into our document. But overall, they were very supportive of the document. I can go back and we have the comments, so I can go back and look at those and create a summary for you.
Yeah, I was mostly curious if there was any suggestions on, some things to improve that we can kind of say, hey, you know what, we didn't think about that, or that type of thing. How do you decide how to prioritize parks?
Well, there's a lot of different ways. The primary way is based on restoration needs. So there are some areas where we might be able to wait a few years, and the forest will still need restoration, but it'll be okay. There are some areas where we're starting to see the crowns get much smaller, so we need to act sooner. Otherwise, they're not going to be able to bounce back from what is a process. I think of it as kind of major reconstructive surgery. You want to make sure you are doing this type of work when the forest is able to best benefit from it. So that's the primary way in which we look at things. But then there's the reality of, life and logistics. So we may have parks with equal needs, but one may have better access and be more, quote unquote, shovel ready. So that might get bumped up ahead just because it's easier to implement while we figure out how to improve access to a park that may have equal need. So primarily, what is the ecological restoration need? And then secondarily, how do we get this done?
I have one last question. You had mentioned REIT 2 and impact fees. Can you clarify what that is? I don't know what.
Yeah, so those, and interrupt me if I say this wrong, those are separate tax buckets that are generally have to do with real estate that are available to parks and the county at large in different ways. So Alex did a great job of talking to our legal and finance managers here at the county to figure out different buckets of money that we could potentially use to fund some of this work and fund environmental assessments. So that is a benefit. There are a lot of competing other parts of the county that need that money as well, especially for REIT 2, which stands for real estate excise tax. 2, yes. So that one's a little trickier, but the park impact fees, that is dedicated to us. So that one is primarily right now being used for environmental assessments. That's prior to any sort of development. We're also looking into some grants. We should be hearing about a grant that we applied for with our Listen Up collaborative that we participate in, hopefully in the next couple of weeks, which would which would give us a lot of money to do some of these activities that are very high cost.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yes, Linda.
One, it's really great news to hear the commissioners then approved the change in the funding strategy. So, that's something we had all asked for, but it's also a little worrisome is where will all this money come from for future, especially the thinning that doesn't generate revenue, right? And one of the things I wondered if in this, overall big picture planning is that we ought to also bring up the idea of the risks of inaction. Because I know when I was, walked into Banner Forest with Dawn, it really struck me how tall and skinny those trees were, and that, years of inaction have resulted, not everywhere, but in a forest that, yeah, it's strikingly gorgeous, but are there public safety risks? And if we didn't do something to thin it and make the trees stronger, are there risks in not doing anything? So both, kind of the risks of, because, people want to, they ask for an analysis of the impacts of an action, but they seldom think about the impacts of inaction. And I think that that's important, or even delayed action. I know when I looked in, and are we going to talk about the strategic plan next, or if I have questions
You
on
go
that?
ahead now.
Okay.
Yeah.
I noticed, when I looked at the strategic plan for Port Gamble, one of the issues that Port Gamble is an anomaly.
It's unique.
In that, part of the acquisition strategy was clear cut, right? Couldn't afford the whole park. So part of the acquisition strategy was clear cut. So it's not just thinning. We're starting over with ground zero. And one of the things I noticed is that I was a little worried about is I think that some of the areas, the first clear cuts are almost 8 years old. And initially, for those of us that advocated for that, because we wanted the park to be as big as possible for forever. And it was a hard trade-off, but it was a trade-off. But one of the concerns is that if we don't act to diversify that forest at the right time, will we end up with a similar problem to, Banner or other competing needs, in that what was planted was dug fir monoculture. Single age stand, dug fir monoculture, and it's growing fast. And, back when we were talking about when this first happened, when the clear cut first happened, the discussion was that when the trees were about 5 years old, the goal was to come in and plant some different types of trees underneath the protection of the dug firs, so that they would be protected from deer browse by the firs, but then you could cut down those dug firs without a huge amount of expense and equipment and everything else. And so one of my questions is, when I look at the Port Gamble forest, it shows some action on only about 110 acres, but I didn't know if that's anywhere near, that I assume that is not treating the trees that were just planted, 8 years ago.
Right. So the Port Gamble plan was what's highlighted in the document is primarily, restorative thinning needs. It doesn't address the issues that we have there with the regenerating stand and those needing to be diversified and the question of when is the best time to do that. We also have the complicating factor of the Scotch broom out there. And is there a benefit to leaving it dense until we get shade that can shade out that Scotch broom and then going in and doing a thinning after that? So these are all kind of questions that'll be addressed as we look at each park with more detail, rather than in the high level plan. And also to address your other comment about the impacts of inaction, that will also be addressed in the park plan. So Kevin and I intend to lay out what the needs are, what the impacts of the proposed treatments are, as well as the impacts of not doing those treatments. So that way, when we bring that park plan to the county commissioners, they see the whole run of the mill part of it.
So in Port Gamble, then the planning for the diversification for the Port Gamble areas that were clear cut and then just planted with Doug fir, does the planning not happen until 2020? When does that happen? Sorry, I'm looking at all these colors going, I'm sure.
Not necessarily. I mean, this plan was put together, looking at, we do have a approved forest management plan for Port Gamble already that Arno put together.
Okay.
So, after we get through the approval of these two documents, then Kevin and I will have more time to dive into those older park plans and see if there are areas that need to be addressed, if conditions have changed, and things like that. But we have been tied up in these two for now.
The only other comment I had is I know we had some public comments saying that we needed more data. And when I read through the two documents, one of my concerns, especially in a time where we're seeing staff layoffs and we know that there's not enough time or money to do a lot of things, is, there was discussion of the planning and then monitoring and a 1 to 3 year schedule. And, how are we gonna, and then of course we also need to do the thinning. And if the thinning has to come from another funding source, how do we work that overall balance? Because, one of my concern is that, especially when you ask for more and more data, you can spend all your time and energy gathering data. And then if you're not taking any actions, because there's so much monitoring and planning, how do we come to that overall balance with sort of the budget struggles that are real?
Sure. I mean, there's a couple of different ways that we're addressing, these types of things. One of them is by creating a natural resource program that's a natural resource program that specializes in this type of work and has more time and capacity to do this type of work. So we're in the process of that, which is going to give, myself and Kevin more time to analyze data and process it as well. Kevin is used to writing these types of plans for 60,000 acres in a year, which is much more than we have in total. So I am confident that we have the ability to collect and analyze the data that we need in order to make these park level plans. In terms of funding, that's another question. We are going to be solely out of the general fund now. So that is just something that I need to build into my budget planning process, is when we have these park plans, but it'll give us a more detailed timeline of what projects are going to be happening where, and then we can pursue those funding sources, whether it's grants, whether it's one of those tax buckets that we need to dip into. So it's just a lot of long-term planning. And so it may slow us down a little bit, but that's not necessarily a bad thing.
Right. That's all I've got.
Any other comments? Well, hearing no other comments, Irene, do you have any more to offer us, or would you like me to parole you?
At this point, we would love to have a vote from the board on whether to move forward with the approval of these documents so that we can bring it to the commissioners with a resolution in December.
Well, thank you for that. Well, I would entertain a motion to move this forward with our approval to the commissioners.
I would so move.
Thank you, John. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any last minute comments before we call the vote? Going once, going twice, gone. Oh, those in favor of moving this forward to the Board of County Commissioners, please raise your hand. That looks like the word unanimous. All opposed? Move it forward.
Thanks, everybody. I know this has been quite the process, so I appreciate all of your input.
And we really appreciate
Yes.
all you and Kevin's hard.
Irene, Alex, and
Right.
to all
Mm.
the people so involved in this and everything. I appreciate all the hard work, all the slings and arrows that y'all took.
Mhm.
I took enough of them just here. I can imagine what happened in y'all's neighborhood, but all the hard work, it reflects in this document. This is really good. I'll be proud to hang my name on this critter.
Yeah, I mean, this was 95% Kevin. We're really lucky to have him. He's a great forester and a great conservationist, and we're glad to have him with us.
So let's keep him around for a while.
We'll do our best.
Arno up and retired on me and I still haven't forgiven him for that. Okay, moving on along, Parks Report. Director.
Thank you. Thank you. You have the monthly written report. I do want to draw some attention to a couple highlights in the report, and then happy to entertain any comments or questions regarding anything I talked about or didn't talk about afterwards. But really honing in on the planning and capital program section, we are super excited about the Gordon Park Master Plan process. We did an RFQ, request for qualifications, over the last month and received an astonishing astonishing response. We received 15 submittals from different firms across the state. One of those came in just past the deadline, so we weren't able to review it. So we had 14 that we reviewed. And of those 14, we are moving 4 of those firms forward to interviews on Friday. And the plan then is to make a decision, move towards contracting, and look to begin the process in January-ish timeframe once we have the contract nailed down. I want to give a shout out to Dawn and John, who, as the subcommittee, participated in the RFQ evaluation and scoring alongside staff. Really appreciate you giving us some of your time and helping out with that effort. Also on the capital front, we have 2 projects that are coming to a close, both of them likely in early December. We are having some time run overs, but nothing of substantial concern. The Point No Point beach and shoreline repair, we are down to kind of just the planting item on the scope of work. So that everything, the major construction is all complete. We are working, well, not we directly, but through the project manager and the contractor, working with their subs to do the landscaping items. And there are like 4,000 plants, shrubs, and trees to be planted on the North Beach berm that was built up. That currently sits about 2.5 feet higher than it has ever historically been. And certainly higher than it was prior to 2022 when we had the overtopping, the storm, and the flooding in the area. So plants have just been unavailable. They're slightly delayed, but once those come through, the subcontractor will be out there completing that project, after which we will be able to open the parking lot after 2.5 years. To public visitation. So super excited about this one coming to a close. The other one is the North Gateway Trailhead at Port Gamble. This one too is down to just a couple items. They're still doing striping for ADA parking at the top. There's some bollards that need to be installed. Some signage that is still needs to be installed, but for the most part, the majority of the scope of work is complete, and we are nearing an opportunity for opening there. So that is also very exciting. And the last one is a project that is just beginning, and that is just outside our door here. The deck replacement is set to begin on Monday. So as of Monday, the demo will begin. There was a slight delay to acquire the materials for the deck railing, but we've gotten over that hurdle, and the contractor will be here on Monday. So we're super excited for that one too. This one, as you know, we've been talking about for about 3 years as well, and happy to finally, in hopefully 6 weeks to 2 months, be able to check this one off of our list as well, and then set ourselves up to move on to 2026 with a whole new list of capital projects we're excited about. So with that, that was kind of it. Happy to entertain any other comments or questions or not.
I was just wondering if on Monday we can set up our beach chairs and our lawn chairs and umbrellas and sit out here and watch the demolition so we can actually believe it.
Yes, come by, please. Might be a little chilly, but
I'm still in shorts. It's the rest of the
I
people
know.
that are freezing.
You're brave.
Alex, I was wondering, there's so much vandalism
Hmm.
in this report that seemed an unusual circumstance, or is it not that unusual?
Unfortunately, it's not too unusual. I would say the amount of vandalism that we've been receiving at South Kitsap Regional Park has ticked up recently. But we do receive a decent amount of vandalism and graffiti at parks. Sometimes it bounces around and other parks will spike up. Right now, we're having one of those moments at South Kitsap. To combat that, we have been working with our risk management team. And if you'll recall, coming out of COVID in 2021 and the next few years, we had a lot of break-ins at the fairgrounds here. We had a lot of vandalism on site. For about the last year and a half or so, the risk management department has paid for security patrols twice a night, 7 days a week, every single night, to come through the grounds, check all the gates, check the buildings, make sure everything is kosher in the park, on the grounds here. And if people are, sleeping in their car, or, there's an abandoned vehicle, they're calling it into the sheriff's department. And that assistance from the security patrols has been a huge boon to us at the county fairgrounds. We are no longer getting break-ins. We're no longer having a lot of that unwanted traffic. And so risk management is now working on a contract amendment to add South Kitsap Regional Park to those security patrols. So that will be coming in the future. We're not quite there yet, but it's just something we're having to manage, unfortunately.
Yes, Don, you have a question?
I do. How, in terms of the cost benefit, I'm sure you're definitely seeing a benefit to paying for the patrols at the fairgrounds. How about someplace like Wicks Lake and Coulter Creek, where we're really having like some timber theft, break the gates and a lot of things? Are you spending a lot of money out there that probably could be maybe offset with patrols?
Yeah, those are also areas of historic challenge. Wicks tends to be a party spot sometimes. Recently, it's been a little bit lower than the past few years, but we also get a lot of unwanted activity at Calvinwood and the vacant house that's there, the lodge, and some of the old cabins. The county is through risk also working on getting those security trailers like you see in some parking lots across businesses for county use. And we would have access to those for parks. I think at least one of them will be dedicated to parks, and we'll be able to move it around to different locations to help prevent and scare off, unwanted activity. We would have another one available in the county, but it might also be used by other departments too. So we don't have those just yet, but once we do have other locations we're ready to deploy to. Horseshoe Lake is another location, is another hotspot.
What do those trailers do? Do they have cameras in them or something?
Yes, they do. It's basically just a trailer that has an arm that extends up and it has cameras on it, and it records the activity. And so the hope is that just having the physical presence of a camera there will scare off people from doing something unwanted. However, if they do something, we would have the ability to go back and view that footage. Yeah. Not perfectly preventable, but it's better than nothing right now. Yeah.
When we were first working on the acquisition of Port Gamble Park, there was a lot of problems with dumping. People would, just show up and dump loads of tires. I mean, I don't know who's got that many tires and, and we ended up buying some cameras and putting them in the trees. But more than that, we bought more signs that said there were cameras than actual cameras. But we did also we had some signs out there for a while encouraging people to take a picture if they saw something, sort of like a see something, say something like you have on the ferry.
Sure.
And Emba posted them got some pictures of people's license plates that were dumping, posted them on Facebook, and it went out on like Como News or something.
Nice.
Wow.
It was pretty great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Alex. Okay, subcommittee meetings. We haven't had any since our last our Brady Bunch meeting last month. Okay, so we're moving into district representative reports. That's where y'all get to brag about your end of the county, or the middle of the county if you're from Central. Yeah.
I've got a report. So the Port Gamble Park Steward Leadership Team met with, I wasn't at the meeting with Aaron Bartleson, but met with him on the new restoration plan. And then I came into a meeting last week because I'd missed that. And just was real impressed with what's moving forward. I know I have a few little comments I was going to send to Aaron, but I'm really glad to see the stewardship process gonna start get moving again. I did voice my concerns that Aaron's going to be really overworked. That's a lot he's stepping up to, but also by putting it under admin and having some backup help, it's not just one person, but was real hopeful to see that moving forward. In Port Gamble, just wanted to mention there were a couple things. One, really glad to see the pedestrian crossing signs that WashDOT put up on State Route 104 by the Bayview parking lot. So had been concerned for a number of years about the number of people walking from one side of the highway to the other or running, across that traffic. So really glad to see those signs go up. Also, a couple of projects that the stewardship leadership is recommending have to do with the upcoming opening of the North Gateway parking lot. One, I think Aaron was going to try and maybe have maintenance staff act on right away, which is putting some barriers and signing one of the trails up there called Tessa's Trail that's really for pedestrians only. flagging that as, before that new parking lot gets opened and we have a lot more mountain bike use up there. So flagging that. There also had been a road trail. He was going to double check to make sure that one had been decommissioned, and there was also no, there was a road trail that wasn't named, that I had walked with Sierra before she left that I don't know. So Aaron was going to check on those type of things, but just glad to see that moving forward again. I think it's important that we keep people helping in the park, especially with reductions. That's all I've got.
Anyone else? Wow, crickets. I don't really have a lot to report, but from the south end and everything, fortunately, so for the recent time, either they've got me on high ignore, or Banner has been kind of settled down a bit and everything when things started moving, when they finally understood that things weren't moving as fast as they thought they were moving. So that is a good thing. And I think this, the strategic plan will go a long way to help keep the world quiet. And I want to second your emotion about, getting a good definition on how the volunteer program, stewardship program, how that is going to work so we can get people more comfortable with where they're at and everything. I think that will be very good. I did send I letter bombed them with a whole bunch of my comments and everything. It was either that or go out and have a life. And, I don't have to wear clothes to letter bomb y'all. So there I am in my jammies typing away. Don't go there. There I am in my jammies noodling. Yeah. So anyway, I want to thank y'all for doing all that, and thank Alex Hardy for taking the lead on this whole thing. So yes.
Yeah, just a little more.
You want to have the last word tonight, don't you?
Not necessarily. I'd hope someone else would, but I'm concerned also about the clear cutting that just is happening at Port Gamble Forest Heritage Park right now. It's devastating and makes me cry every time I go up there. But I've noticed a lot of the flagging and the pink spray paint on a lot more trees. So curious, do you guys, again, I would think that you would approach us here at the board or whatever so that we kind of knew what was about to take place. Do you guys have any insight into that? And again, I'm just curious about bypass and some of the areas up like lower Mirkwood and Mordor and all those really cool trails. Are they getting clear cut? Because that's where the tape is and that's where the paint is. So is that going to happen?
So the clear cutting that's happening at Port Gamble is not in the park. It's on private property adjacent to the park. So it's part of that 400 acres. It's owned by Rainier.
Okay, that part that has just been done, but more of that tape and paint is going up into those areas.
Yeah, so those are areas where Rainier does own the timber rights. So you can look online to see what FPAs they've submitted. There's a 30-day comment period for those FPAs, so that all of that data is publicly available online. But yes, that is an area where Rainier does own the timber rights, and they do have the right to clear cut in there.
Thank you.
I think that your document said that there's still 1,200 acres of timber rights that Rainier owns within the park.
Something like that. Yeah.
It is a lot.
Yep.
Yes, Madam Chair-elect.
Thank you. I wanted to thank the people who came to give us information from South Kitsap this time around, because the park staff really do put their heart and soul into things, and they really try hard. And I think it's important to hear from people like Catherine when she came and told them about the positive impacts that we're having. And I really love that Casey comes regularly and reminds us about all of the impacts he has on the community with young people and how many hours, people from the community are getting together and doing something they love in a positive way. And Parks has made that possible. And they're giving back to the community in ways that we don't always see. And I think letting park staff know that they're helping do those things is important so that we're not just telling them about all the bad things they do. So thank you for coming tonight.
Yes, John.
In line with what she was saying, the one thing that I've been missing the last couple of years is the Kitsap Live Steamers reports. But we haven't had them for a while. They were always pretty entertaining.
I have it on good authority. They are doing quite well right now.
I'll tell them we miss them.
Okay, public comments. I'm seeing nobody jumping up. Is anybody jumping up online? No. All right. Well, there's only one other item on our agenda, and I would entertain a motion that we adjourn.
I'll make a motion and we adjourn.
We have a motion to adjourn. Do we have a second?
I will second that.
We have a second. It's moved and seconded. Any debate on this motion? Hearing none. All in favor of adjournment?
Oh, I stopped to vote. Yeah, I was leaving.
Yeah. So it's unanimous. All right. We stand adjourned. By the way, by tradition, we do not meet next December.
That's correct.
So, y'all have good holidays.
I thought I was going to get to listen to you another month, so I
No.
know what to do.